Good evening, council. I want to call to order the August 11th, 2022 special town council meetings of Corporation of Harpers Ferry. Let the record reflect all members of the council are present, and I'll defer some introductions for a minute or two. Approval of the agenda. Before we do that, before Christian reminds me of the reading, Christian, you didn't think I was going to name it.
Until further notice, the Harpers Ferry Town Council will hold its meetings virtually via Zoom webinar. The public may watch meetings by YouTube video. These options comply with the Open Governmental Meetings Act. That's it. And further information, it's on the Harpers Ferry website.
Thank you, Christian. Approval of the agenda. Any additions, deletions, corrections to the agenda? Debbie, did you?
We'll have to postpone number one.
Okay, we're going to defer number one. So I need a motion regarding the agenda to approve the agenda with, we'll defer number one to a later date. So
I'm going to approve the agenda as amended.
do I have a second on the motion? Second from Christian. Any discussion on the motion to approve the agenda as amended? Hearing none. All those in favor? Carries unanimously. It is 7:03 p.m. Item number 2, update by Swan Hilltop Operating Partners LLC and propose amendment to the street use agreement indeed and take action if necessary. We have 2 members of Swan. We have Laurel Zemansky, who is the project manager for the Hilltop project, and we have Councilor Mike Funk, who represents Swan LLC. And we have the town attorney, our counselor, Mr. Ken Sayer, present. Before I turn the floor over to Laura or Mike or whoever, let me ask our counsel if you wanted to make any opening remarks or anything.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just for the council and the public, what we're here today is we're going to provide information. I have spoken with Mr. Funk in the past. There is a couple of issues that need to be amended in the street use agreement. Tonight's purpose is to understand what they're looking for. If at the end of this, we want to move forward, the next step would be to go to a future council meeting with an ordinance, just like we did when we passed the original. So there'll be a first reading of an ordinance, then we will set a second reading and time for public comment, public hearing, and a third meeting. So all that we're talking about, there's going to be plenty of time to discuss it, plenty of time for the public to look at it, but we felt that it would be a good idea for the council to see what's going on, to understand what changes. One of them is a description issue, which the description of one of the right-of-ways left a little portion between it and the property that they already own, and they'd like to have that cleaned up. And so it's more of a clerical issue than anything else. But Your Honor, I think we're ready to turn it over to them for an update. And
Thank you. Mr. Sayer, Laura, you want to take it or Mr. Song?
Sure.
Well, it's good to be with all you guys again. So we did sign a street use agreement back in April of 2020. And since then, we have received our TBD approval with the state and have progressed to disassemble the old hotel. And that was complete the beginning of April. Now we have worked on design construction documents, and these are the details that we couldn't do before. So these are lengthy, very expensive procedures. So as we've been working through that with our architects, our civil engineer, our landscapers, and all the MEPs, which is mechanical, electrical, plumbing, consultants, we've come up with a few things that we would like to add to the corrective deed, which would clean up the clerical error that occurred in April of 2020. So that's what the meeting is about this evening. And do you want to add anything, and or should we pass out our exhibits?
Yeah, let me use a couple if you can. In addition to that, as Mr. Sarah alluded to, immediately after the original conveyance, we determined there were a couple errors in the deed that needed corrected. So really, what we're proposing does two things. One, it acts as a corrective deed to correct those errors. Some of them were flat out errors. Some of them were less than accurate language that if we're making a change, it makes sense to be more accurate. And then the second component are these requested revisions to provisions in the street use agreement. And has council received, or do you want them at this point to receive a copy of the red line version of
Yes.
the deed and a
Yes.
clean version?
The red line version and also the plat.
I've got hopefully 10 copies. That's a clean one.
There's an next one. If you don't, I'll-
And those are the red lines. And then we have a packet with respect to the modifications. Unfortunately, I was printing them on 11 by 17, and after 8, our copier decided it wasn't going to do anymore. So we have smaller ones also. So if you have good eyesight, maybe you want a smaller one. And that's, I guess, it
Okay.
for me.
So we'll wait for everybody to get their color exhibit. Thank you for bringing.
It probably emailed you yesterday saying where you bringing copies instead of this afternoon saying, hey, we're bringing copies.
Well, I got back to the office after taking my son to college and just stopped to pick some stuff up. So that's when I saw your email. So the timing was at least good, better than what I got. There's one more large one if somebody would prefer. Yeah.
Ken, do you need this?
I've got.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll take it.
Okay.
Small ones and one.
Okay, so I see everybody's, can't wait to look at all the color pictures there, but. So if we could just start on the cover and, look at the 3 items that are listed for discussion this evening. They are the porte cochere, which is the arrival canopy, the transformer location, and the position of the overlook in its existing location. So let's start, and we'll move to the first topic, which is the porte cochere.
Did you have one?
I don't need a copy.
Okay.
I've got a copy at the office. But I just,
There should be plenty of small ones. Or you can have the big one and I'll take the small.
I got my cheaters. I can see it.
So within the street use agreement, the original street use agreement, it stated that within the right of way, that there was only softscape, hardscape, or retaining walls 3 feet and under. We are requesting that there is a correction made to include the post that hold up the porte cochere, that it be added to this list. The porte cochere design, if you flip to the first one is the plan view. It shows the outline of the porte cochere in front of the hotel lobby. And then the second one shows the view looking down East Ridge Street. There will be short stone columns that will be under 3 feet. And then the post will rise up from those stone columns. So the reasons why we are asking for this is because it provides cover for the guest during arrival and departure, you know, from the elements. And loading and unloading, of course, also a spot for anybody that's disabled to exit their vehicle and get in safely. So that is the main reason that we're asking. It does require 2 lanes by design, 1 lane for the vehicle to pull up and then 1 + 1 lay-by lane. And that is more of a safety feature because if there was a car that was parked there and somebody had an emergency, they'd have to get around that car. It's very standard hotel design to have this type of arrival canopy. And it has been designed height-wise and width-wise to allow emergency vehicles to pass through. So if you look at the rendering, it's a very small sliver of a, you know, basically a ceiling and 2 posts that will be over the right of way, and the 2 posts will be inside the right of way. So are there any questions on this?
Yeah, my voice a little soft-spoken. Thank you for explaining the reasons. Definitely not going to hear it now. The reasons and the safety features. When looking at this, did you also examine the historical context of the site when designing it?
The historical context of use or the site, the original hotel?
Yeah, like how was that considered when designing it?
Well, when we designed the hotel, it is taken from the 1914 edition of the hotel. And the actual hotel had arrival on the east side where many of you saw the collapsed area. Because of the way that we're trying to route people in on a carriageway where they kind of come up and they see the turret and the grand confluence on the right-hand side. It's like a sense of arrival. They would come, then we changed the main entrance to the south side of the hotel. So historically, the entrance is in a different side. The existing hotel had porches where people would drive up, and there might have been a little bit of coverage. Back then, it was very maybe loosey-goosey to, you know, put on additions of any kind. So we believe that, you know, it is an ask that would only benefit the visitation and, you know, the look of the hotel and the operations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope I can answer your question.
Great.
I see I see the railing around it, and that is just decorative. That's not functional railing for people to be on top of that structure, or what?
That is correct. There will be no access out there, and they were actually planning on putting a vegetative green roof on that section. So it would only be, the only access would be to maintain that.
Any other questions on the okay?
I realize that the one page shows. I see the one page that shows the view looking down Reed Street.
The plan.
I'm wondering, in real terms,
how much of the view shed is going to be blocked by this? And also, what the implications for the pedestrians coming in would be. Is it going to appear to be a block there to the overlook? I just wonder if you have any.
Well, right, thank you. So since we're doing a circular one-way motion of the vehicles, the vehicles will have already viewed the confluence and will be pointed towards the west by then. So, and as you see in the rendering, it's really not blocking the view of walking east on East Ridge Street. You know, it's really just two posts.
So that's the way the traffic's coming in, it's like from like the back there from,
Mhm.
okay, I get it.
So it's, yeah, a carriageway is gonna be constructed in between the Armory houses and the garage. And that will be a one-way loop coming up, and then the traffic will go west on East Ridge, back down Columbia.
Okay.
So it's to keep the traffic out of the residential areas. We promise to use Columbia Street.
For those of you that weren't involved in the original negotiations, as Laurel pointed out, it was contemplated that there wouldn't be any hard structures in the right of ways that were conveyed. And so that's why they've had to come back here to allow them to put the post there. There was, I guess they could structurally design something that was hanging off the side of the building that didn't have posts, and it would not violate the agreement that they had. So that's why I think that it was, they determined that they needed to come back and ask us if they could put the post. Now, remember, part of the reason why we did what we did, the Swan Group did make application. You did get your tourist development district, right?
That's correct.
And so under that state law, it basically takes out from the city its ability to regulate the construction and basically whatever was going on in this district. Because we had the right of ways in our conveyance to them with the right of ways, that gave the town the ability to place some restrictions because we were the property owners. And so that's why these restrictions were negotiated. I know that Christian and Kevin, we probably had 20 meetings going through all of this. And so, was it 17?
Yeah.
Who's counting?
Only 42 hours.
But, so that's why we have a little bit of say-so here. It's because we were the property owners that conveyed this. So that's where we're at with this.
There's additional context because so many of us were not part of those discussions. Can you describe what, about executive session, what can be talked about and what can't? What was the original reasoning behind that restriction?
Well, I think most of that restriction dealt with the road coming up off of Washington, where they were moving the right of way. And that's where we had a lot of discussion about landscaping and softscaping and that. I think the biggest issue was, if you guys correct me if I'm wrong, we wanted to guarantee that anybody and everybody could go up to the overlook. And so we didn't want a wall built or something like that that would restrict it, or something designed so it looks like you're not welcome up there. And so that was the big issues with why we didn't want any hardscaping in the area.
Okay, so it wasn't a philosophical, there shall be nothing here. It was for the specific idea of not creating something that was walled off.
Correct. We wanted to make sure that if at 3 in the morning you wanted to go up and see the overlook, we have 24/7 ability to do that. We could go up and see it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can add to that. So it wasn't just the access, it was also the vista as well.
Yeah.
So that, this Port Cachera, obviously, you'll still be able to see the confluence. But, there was no one wanted something built that would block the view of the confluence from anywhere on Ridge Street.
And this is pretty far from it. It's, the old hotel had it, their entrance on the side of the building. Now this is on, yeah, towards the confluence. This is now inside on Ridge.
Thank you. That's super helpful, not having been part of the discussions.
Anything else for Laura or Mr. Funk? On that part of it? Okay, Laura?
Okay, so we will move on to the next exhibit, which is the transformer location. So the street use agreement, as it stands, requests only underground utilities in the right of ways that we purchase. As our designers and engineers were developing the actual MEP, structures, infrastructure here, we identified that we need 10 by 20 feet for a transformer, for 2 transformers. That would be the total pad dimension, 10 by 20. And we cannot put them underground. So we cannot put them underground because they require adequate ventilation. And also the front of the transformers, you need 10 feet in front of them because when they work on them, they have a 10-foot stick that actually goes and turns it off for safety reasons.
They can only touch them with a 10-foot pole.
Right. So it's called gear switching. So it's gear switching safety. So those are the 2 main reasons why they cannot go underground. We identified, and it's very small text there, 2 locations for the transformers to go. The first one, which is the preferred location, is right next to the garage and the loading dock and the electrical room. It makes the most sense to have all of those MEP items, infrastructures close by one another.
Could you point that out, Laura?
Yeah.
Where?
Sure, it is right here.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So it is in the Columbia Street, existing Columbia Street right away, and it is above ground. Therefore, we are, approaching you for the, the ability to put them there. It is the best spot for them. But also they need to be within 35 feet of the paved street for the boom to install them or replace them. And we can fence and landscape around them to buffer them. The inside area there where our preferred location is next to the garage is, it's all infrastructure right there. So it makes a lot of sense to have them right where they are. There's only one other option where we can put them, and that is to the west of Rail Line Columbia. So I don't know if everybody has identified that, but it's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So with that, it's a little bit further away, more expensive. It's closer to the residential area. Of course, there will be the question, what's the noise level? We have in the TDD that it cannot exceed 65 decibels on the residential side. So it would not exceed that. And to kind of, put in perspective what 65 decibels is, it's similar to normal conversation and laughter. So very unobtrusive. So either of these locations are possible for us, but both of these locations will be your agreement because all of the utilities are supposed to be underground on the western lots as well.
Clarification, Laurel. You're not asking for two, you're asking for one.
Right,
Right, okay. And
Yeah.
your preferred is next to the structure.
yes.
What's the maximum height of that? Do you know what that would be?
They're 4 feet.
3 feet, 4 feet, okay.
They're like the ones we have on the street.
Yeah, oh, okay. And so a lot of the DBs probably could be mitigated by the shrubbery or whatever around it, knocking it down
Yeah,
even
we can
further.
put a fence and some vegetation around it and, yeah, it's away from the rooms, it's away from the residency, it's, it makes a lot of sense to have it in that location.
Nice.
And you said it was specified that it needs to be on the western side.
Yes. It doesn't need to be on the western side.
Well, I have an old version of this. Is this where it would be? In this section here?
Yes, this is when we had an outfitters building.
Right.
Now the garage is a little larger here, this wall,
Okay.
for the load, to accommodate the loading dock is in this area. So they would be right here on the corner there.
I get it.
Laurel, at some point there was a conversation, or at some point there was some discussion about having a sidewalk along the old Columbia Street to keep that as pedestrian, just to kind of preserve that path. Is that totally out of the picture now?
Well, I don't believe that it was a sidewalk, Chris. I believe it was a change in pavement.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe it was a change of payment, just to say this was the existing Columbia Street historically. So whether it's a different color or, the sidewalk, the sidewalk is going to be on the east side of Columbia Street that goes down by the barber shop.
I assume you're going to have a generator as well. Would the generator be somewhere close to the area where the transformer would be?
The generator is in the garage. And it is, if you see on the south side of the garage, there's a little grid. It's very light. That's where the generator would be. And of course, with a generator, you will need a fuel source. So there will be a tank and a generator inside the garage.
Council, any other questions on the transformer? Hearing none, Laurel?
Okay, thank you. All right, moving to the third issue, talking point here is the position of the overlook. In the street use agreement, it was agreed to push the overlook south into the East Ridge right away. That would be going closer to the lodge that we are preserving. With that, we had the landscape architects do a line of sight study, and pushing it back 15 feet would block the view where the hotel restaurant is or will be, where it was historically. That piece of building will block the view going upriver. So It'll block that long view that you have from the existing overlook, as well as, you know, maybe changing that view looking straight down towards the island. So even though it's only 15 feet, we thought, well, you know, the view that it has now is a historical view. And we will still have the 24/7 access. We're not requesting to change that. You know, we kind of see this as a give. I think a lot of people consider that sacred, that area. I believe I've heard, you know, people go there to pray and contemplate God. And so we think that, you know, that's kind of an easy request for.
And if you can verify, as I look at the plan, it appears it's at the same elevation as the existing.
Exact same location.
Yeah, I'll add that, that the original desire was to keep the overlook in the area pretty much where it is anyway. So moving it was sort of a necessity. It wasn't something that was originally the town people wanted necessarily. They wanted to keep it where it is. So
Well, I believe that the agreement to put it in the street was because we were purchasing the streets, and that was the land that you could request, you know, certain constraints or guidelines or agreements for. So we're saying we would, you know, be happy to leave it where it is and give that to the town so they can enjoy that historically. I mean, you can see on the exhibit that there's a red line, which indicates the north side of the East Ridge right away. So it would have to be pushed below that red line, red dotted line.
Yeah, I was afraid when I saw the item that the overlook was going to be, you know, moving.
Even further south.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
So just to be clear, the overlook that's there now will be the overlook that you all are proposing. That's the change in the street use agreement, is to leave the overlook where it
It's
is.
existing.
Historically.
Historical existing location.
And it's better there. And can I ask what precipitated the change?
Basically the view that it would cut off by the restaurant there. I mean, if you move that circle down and put a straight line upriver, up the Potomac River, you can see that it's going to intersect with the restaurant. So we didn't feel like we should take that away.
So if we went by the letter of the agreement, the view would have been diminished.
Yes, the view would have changed.
Actually improves it, but the public view is better. This new,
What, Christian?
I think the public view is better now, like. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, if we leave it where it is existing,
yes,
the view is better. You can see the long view upriver.
Right.
All the way to Matt Knott's house. I don't know if you guys seen that new house on the cliff there. It's beautiful.
Anything else, council, on the overlook? Okay, Laura?
Okay, so I think I've pretty much described to you, council and mayor, and the reasons why we're requesting the things that we are, and you know, it's just a bunch of moving parts that all have to come together technically and operationally. So because of the details of the design, you know, we didn't know those beforehand when we made the street use agreement. So we request that you consider making those changes in the corrective deed that Kim was discussing that, had some clerical issues, and we do it all at once.
I mean, there's a couple of changes that if council is willing to entertain the changes that were just discussed, that would be in here. There is, as you can see, there's actually appears to be a change in the name of the grant deed. It's going from Swan Hilltop Operating Partners to HF Hilltop LLC, which is, it's not really a big deal. It's still the same people, correct?
And that's because the first grantee has conveyed it to.
Yeah, there was an assignment.
Right.
You probably do just like that. Because you're driving me crazy.
I know, I'm so sorry.
So, Mike, if you want to, I mean, if there's some parts of the changes that you want to discuss, if you can see that there was some cleaning up of the way that we've referred to grantee and grantor. It's in all caps now, as opposed to just a capital letter. So that's why there's a lot more red lines and maybe on page 3, that's that whereas, which is a red line, is just going to be talking about where we made the changes with our ordinances, so that whoever looks at this deed 50 years from now will know when we did what we did. There's some description errors that they've come back and found in parcel 1 on page 4. It had northeasterly, it should have been northwesterly corner. Change. We're not changing what we're selling it, we're just clarifying what it was. Parcel 3, I think that's where the big issue with the Stanhagen property, that it's been previously conveyed by the town. I can't remember, was it conveyed from the town to Stanhagen or from Stanhagen to the town?
But there was an intervening grantee in there, but it was basically the front porch into the right of way. So years ago, the city conveyed it to Mrs. I can't remember her name.
Awesome.
But you all own that property now, correct? So, it's not really changing. They own both sides of that line.
Correcting it so you're not conveying something you no longer have.
But in general, there's not, other than these proposed changes that we just talked about, there's really not any big changes in this proposed deed. It just clarifies and cleans up. And so if it's my recommendation to council, if we're interested in moving forward, that we have a consensus to have an ordinance prepared, and we have a first reading making these changes at a future council meeting. I don't know when we want to set that meeting. We would have the first reading. If it passes first reading, then we will set it for a final reading and a public hearing, just like we did the last time. And if it passes then part of that will be authorizing the execution of the amended deed. Now, the mayor and I were just talking, this information we should probably post on the website so people can look at it and see exactly what we're talking about, so that everyone knows what's going on. One of the differences now versus what we were doing before, before we were trying to negotiate the sale of the real estate. And that's why a lot of what we did was in executive session pursuant to West Virginia law. Well, we're not selling any land now. So that's why we're not in an executive session today. And we won't be in executive session going forward. We're just clarifying this. So this is all going to be in open meetings. But my recommendation is that we move forward and authorize me to prepare the ordinance and get it in front of council for decision.
I'd say the one thing, if it could be incorporated, is a commitment with the transformer to, making a best effort to buffer the sound on that. And to minimize the profile, of the port crochet.
And there is in the original agreement, there is, and I couldn't remember what the decibel level is, but there is a pretty significant requirement on that side of the property to reduce the sound.
And this is within the.
Yeah, this would be on the west side of the property, because it, basically what it said was from the west property line.
Mhm.
You know, you could take a meter and it's got to meet that number.
Yeah, so the close, if we did the secondary, location for the transformers, the residents, the transformers would be closer to the residential.
Yeah, certainly that first location, even as it is, seems to be certainly
That makes a
visually,
lot more sense.
visually too, that it's gonna be nested with other items that are infrastructure.
Yeah, and this is a big one for our electrical engineers because they cannot do any further design until they know where those transformers are located. So we're kind of at a halt until we get an agreement made with you.
Well, we know one thing, if the hotel is built and becomes a reality, we will be able to buy a very nice microphone system.
Can I clarify something? The black line version that we have has all the changes.
Right, this is the clean version. This has all the changes. When you, over the next days that you're looking at this, this is the one that's easier to determine what was changed from the other. But yes, the black one is, if we accepted all these changes, that's what it will look like.
And I'll be happy to come back if you'd like, after you Ken went through a lot of the changes. If you have questions on why something has changed after having a chance to digest it, I'll be glad to come back and explain that.
I think the action is to authorize me to prepare an ordinance for a future meeting.
I move that the council be authorized to prepare an ordinance in line with the request made tonight for consideration of future meeting.
Okay, second on the motion, second from Chris. Discussion on the motion.
In that, does that also contemplate, making the best effort on the transformer? Was that intended as part of the motion?
Yes, and it's in line with our discussion.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? 7-0. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second on the motion to adjourn. I have a second from Christian. Discussion on the motion to adjourn. Hearing none. We are. All those in favor of adjournment? We're adjourned at 7:45 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarge.